Digitakt. Here she is. Maybe it's that one. So here it is, the Digitakt. And as you can see, it's not that big. I have pretty small hands and it covers pretty much the entire surface here. The buttons are a lot bigger than I initially thought from looking at the videos. They are deeper, they have a less noticeable click to them compared to the previous Elektron product. And as you can see here from a side view here, you can see that they are quite deep. So here she is, the Digitakt. But what kind of machine is this really? Let's start by talking and showing you a little bit of what it can do. It's first and foremost, it's a sequencer. It's a sampler and sequencer. It has 8 channels here for samples and 8 channels for MIDI. And it's a very capable MIDI sequencer as well as audio sequencer. Now the samples are mono, that's something to keep in mind. But the output is stereo because the delay and reverb are stereo, and you can of course do panning and so on. So the Digitakt is marketed as a drum machine, and yeah, it's a drum machine. But it's also a lot more than just a drum machine. It's a sample player, and here's a sample from the Mother 32. As you can hear, very nice tone when you play it chromatically. But besides being a drum machine and a sample player, you can actually use it to create sounds. If you have a very short waveform, for example, or a piece of a sample, you can create something that sounds like this. Very nice synth sound that actually started with a one-shot sample from the Mother 32. And this sound really came alive through the help of the Digitakt's filter, the filter envelope, the amp envelope, the delay, the reverb, and the LFO. So you can go from something that didn't sound even remotely close to this, and just, you know, shape something. So it's a sampler, it's a drum machine, it's actually a synth in some ways as well. So that's kind of one way to start talking about the Digitakt. That is very versatile. It's very capable, even though it's a small form factor, even though it's mono. And it's super cool to sample into it using a microphone and sampling your own voice, or just, you know, recording something with your smartphone and just plugging it into the input, recording, say, a vocal sample, something like this. So now I'd like to take you through an overview of the physical layout of the Digitakt. Now I will do a more detailed, more in-depth overview video, so this is just a quick rundown. You have the master volume over here. It affects both the headphones and the left and right outputs. There's no way to separate these audio streams. They are basically the same. Then you have the level data. It's the main knob for doing big changes. For example, when you're in the source mode here, you can change the volume of a track. But if you, for example, press the tempo button, this is the tempo button over here, you use this one to change the BPM as well. And then you have the function key, and the function key lets you access secondary options for all the buttons, the secondary commands that each button can have. But it's also good to note that some buttons do have secondary functions, but they can also have dual layers. For example, the source button here, if you press it once, you can see the waveform. So you can toggle between different modes. But not every button has this. The filter, for example, doesn't have it. So if you use the function key and press filter, you just access a different function, the delay. Those are, if I zoom in here, you can see probably pretty clearly that those secondary functions are displayed under here in a different color. Under here you have the track select. You can press it in order to select a track. Now you can just press the button, but that will trigger the sound that is on that particular track. So if you press the track and you select here, you won't trigger the sound. If you hold function and press track, you access the chromatic mode. And in chromatic mode, you can use these buttons here up and down to switch octaves. And down here we have the pattern button. Pressing it lets you access, you don't have to hold it down, you can press it, lets you access 16 patterns. These 16 patterns are stored in banks, and there are 8 banks here present. So you can't press the top row here. You have from 9 to 16, you have banks. So we're in bank, I think it's called bank 9 here, or bank A, I guess. Yeah, it's bank A, and then bank B, then bank C. You can see it here on the display. And then you press A, and then you press a pattern. So if I want to go to a fresh pattern, for example, I could press bank B here or bank 10, and you can see here that I can select a pattern. So now I'm in B1. If we zoom in here, you can see that up in the corner here it says B1. And just looking at the screen here, you can say that it says untitled. Untitled references the pattern. So you basically name the patterns. In previous Elektron gear, you named the kits, not really the pattern. I think you could name the patterns, I'm not sure, but you may name the kits. The kits were a collection of sounds and the settings for those sounds. And on the Digitakt, you have a new kit assigned to each pattern. So if I do changes to pattern 1 here, and then move to pattern 2, everything will be default. And if I copy pattern 1 here over to pattern 2, those sounds and those changes will follow to pattern 2. But if I do changes to the second pattern, it won't affect the first one. Some other important secondary functions here is function plus pattern. Lets you go into the metronome, you activate it, you can do a pre-roll and so on. If you press function and bank, you go into the mute mode, and suddenly you can mute and unmute at will. This can actually be accessed just using function and a particular track. Here are sort of the main controls, the stop, start, and the record button. If we press record, we go into the step mode where you can put down triggers for different steps. And up here we have the import export button where you can use to save sounds, import and export sounds. Here we have the save project button that lets you access the projects, the samples, the MIDI config, the system as well. And then we have the sampling menu, and I won't go into detail how to sample in this video, it'll be in another video, but it's really straightforward. You just press the sampling menu here, then you have 33 seconds of memory. You can set a threshold, you can set, if you want to use the external inputs or internal as source, you can use the monitor, and you can set a threshold, and then you can arm it or just manually record. And there's even a function, if you press function here and the direct, you can see there it says direct under it. It's actually auto enables. So now it's actually recording here, and you just press yes, and you have a little wave file here. So it's very quick, and then we can just press no here. I think no, function and no to remove the sample. So it's very quick. And then we have the tempo button here with the BPM and everything. You also use the function and yes here and function and no to save or reload the pattern. This can be really good if you've saved a pattern and you start tweaking away and you don't like those changes. You just press function and no in order to reload a pattern. And down over up here we have the different controls for the different sounds, and I can just show you how easy it is to load a sound. So let's go to pattern. We are in bank B here and we have pattern 1. In order to load a sound, usually what I do is you can do it in a number of different ways, but I usually press source and then I just use you see it's a sample over here. Let's zoom in a little bit and you probably can see it a little bit better. Up here is a sample, and as you can see here's a list of different samples that are actually loaded into this project already. Kick drum. Yeah, a number of different samples. Yeah, so these are all drum samples obviously. So I'll just pick a kick drum here and press yes. So now I have a kick drum here on channel 1, and I can load some kind of snare here. Yeah, so snare drum on channel 2. There's really not much to say under the trig tab, so we'll move over to the source. Here we have the tuning, as well as if we want to reverse the sound, for example. We can loop a sound as well. And we can change the bitrate. There's also options for start and length, but you can also do this by pressing the source once, and here you can see the waveform. And you can change the length, for example. And by doing so, you can really make some cool stuff happen. So now in the, as you can hear, we went from a kick drum to something quite strange. Now in the filter section here, and here we have the frequency and resonance and the type of filter. And we can also change with the filter envelopes. And I'm adding some attack and a pretty short hold and a pretty short decay, sustain and release here for the filter envelope. So we went from a kick drum to this sound. Very cool indeed. And it just, highlighted that it's very interesting here. And basically what I did is just set it to loop this very short part of the kick drum sample. And created this sound. Of course, this is nothing new under the sun here. You can do this on multiple different synthesizers and samplers and so on, but I just think it's very cool. Yeah, so under filter you of course have the basic filter envelope, and under amp here you have the attack, hold, decay and overdrive. We can add some overdrive to the sound as well. And here we have reverb and delay, and reverb and delay are sends. So basically the first row here, the source, filter, amp and LFO and trig and so on, those are per channel. The delay and reverb, those are kind of master effects. So they are send, or not master effects, they are send effects. So you basically send to them. So let's add some reverb and add some delay. And if I want to tweak the reverb, I just hold function here and I press the amp button here. So now we are in the reverb section, and I want to increase the decay time here as well, and some pre-delay, and you can increase some shelving frequency and the shelving gain as well. And you can add high pass filter and low pass filter. And let me just remind you that we started with this kick sample here. That's the starting point. And we turn it into this bass sound. So as you can see, it's pretty simple to apply some reverb and delay. It's pretty quick. And we can also go into the LFO, and we could probably do a modulation here. In the LFO here, you pick a destination source, so something that you will affect with LFO. Here's the bitrate, for example. Increase the amount here, or depth. And we could probably go into audio rates, increasing the multiplier here. Let's see if we can do something crazy. You can change the waveform as well. And by changing the amp as well, we can make some big differences to the sound. So from kick drum to kind of drone sound, very cool. And lastly, we have the master section. It's just a little view here of the channels and the level of the channels. And I think it's kind of odd that they've labeled them kick, snare, and so on, because as you can see, this is much more than a drum machine. It's something totally unique in that sense. You can go in so many different directions. But yeah, it's labeled as a drum machine, and yeah, it does drums really well. Day one with the Digitakt, and here's my first impression of this little device. If we start with the physical appearance of the Digitakt, it's quite different from other Elektron products. The buttons here are bigger, they have a different feel to them. Overall, the workflow is faster, definitely a lot faster than on some of the other products like the analog keys, or even, I'd dare to say even analog rhythm. So it's a faster workflow. Everything is more tightly put together here. The screen is a big improvement. If you're an old person, shots fired, you'll have a lot easier time looking at the screen and seeing everything. It actually makes a huge of a difference even for me. I didn't really have a problem with the older screens. So something I also noted from working with it the first day is that the amp envelope has a different feel to it compared to something like the Octatrack. It's much easier to play something chromatically on the Digitakt and make it sound really good. It doesn't get get those pops and clicks that the Octatrack usually did. I know there's workarounds and so on, but it's just a lot faster. And I think that kind of sums it up. It's definitely not an Octatrack, it's definitely not an analog rhythm. It's something different, but the workflow is fast. It seems very intuitive to me, who is an Elektron guy. So overall, I really had some fun with it. I think you could say that that amp envelope is a lot more musical. That's how I'd put it. I mean, in lack of better technical terms. Now, I haven't loaded that many of my own samples into it, so I think that'll come in a different video. But so far, just with the preset samples, learning the sequencer, learning the ins and outs of it has been a lot of fun. So this was just the first day with the Digitakt, and yeah, as you can see and hear, I thought it was a lot of fun. Oh, and I didn't want to forget, my kind of first impression is that, yeah, the sounds that you get with the Digitakt is kind of cool, but at the same time, those sounds are like with the Octatrack, it's just samples. You kind of need to sample stuff into it or bring your own samples into it to really make it come alive. You can do a lot of things with the presets, but don't go buying it expecting that the presets will take you all the way, because you have to sample into it, you have to load your own samples. I think that's a no-brainer. It's the same with Octatrack. I dabbled a bit with the preset samples and the samples you got from Loopmasters when you purchased it, but really that didn't do it for me. You have to load your own stuff into it, you have to sample your own instruments, but I think that's where all the creative aspects come into play. So I think that is the point with a lot of Elektron gear. You have to get into it, you have to make it your own. It doesn't really provide you with everything you need to make a track from the start. You have to invest into it, and when you do, you get something that is truly yours. So these were just my day one first impressions of working with the Digitakt. I really like it. It's a lot faster than my Octatrack, for example. It feels really creative. The conditional trigs are great combined with the sampling workflow. It's kind of everything that I expected from it. Sure, I'd like it to be stereo, stereo samples, but I think it can get around that. The reverb sounds good, the delay sounds good, so that kind of balance it out. But so far, so good, and I'll be keeping you guys posted with more videos, explaining different things. And don't be shy, leave comments down in the comment sections if there are things you want me to check out with it. It's not always easy for me to know exactly what kind of aspects of the Digitakt that you want to see. So maybe you can put a comment down in the comment section telling me what you want to know about it, what you want to see. So this was Bo from Bobeats, and I hope you have a very pleasant day. Thank you so much.